That's a beautiful fan. Peace and blessings. This is Derric Rau Khu more. And, every now and then I end up getting a message from individuals who have found their way to this channel. And they'll ask me, they'll say, hey, how do you practice Kemetic spirituality? They'll ask, how do you practice it? And then they proceed to tell me that basically, they said, well, I'm honoring the ancestors, honoring my ancestors. They'll say that they have dedicated spaces to Kemetic divinities, and that they are living their lives according to Ma'at. But it just feels like they're not making a connection. It just feels like they're still not practicing Kemetic spirituality. So how do you practice it? How do I practice Kemetic spirituality? And usually when they tell me this, I ask them, I say, can I inquire, how are you living your life according to mine? And usually when I ask that question, what most people tell me is they're living their lives based upon the 7 principles of Ma'at by memorizing the 42 laws of Ma'at. And as soon as they tell me that, because I know how a lot of people feel about that, usually when they tell me that, I ask, I say, do you mind if I can, share my experience about the 42 laws of Ma'at? And they tell me, well, they go ahead and they say, well, yeah, go ahead. So I said, well, based upon my experience, based upon what I know, the 42 laws of Ma'at, they don't work for us. And the reason why they don't work for us is because they were originally written for the scribe Annie. They were tailored for the scribe Annie. And that's the reason why the 42 laws of Ma'at, they really don't work for us. Now, usually when I tell people that, it for the most part, it goes over their head. And the reason why is because it's hard for a lot of people to believe that the Kemetic people actually had priesthood members who were tailoring specific codes of conduct and codexes, I guess you could call them, and laws for individuals. They find it hard to believe that. And part of the reason why they find it hard to believe that is because we've been told for so long that there is just one size fits all for everything when it comes to spirituality. That's the reason why we're given the prescription. Whenever something goes wrong, oh, just pray about it. Whenever this goes wrong, oh, just pray about it. And that's not how it was practiced in Kemetic, in the Kemetic society. The Kemetic society, they recognize that we're all unique. We all have different backgrounds. We all have different experiences. So we all have different things that we have to work on, different, hurdles and obstacles that we have to overcome. And because of that understanding, because the Kemetic priesthood, they understood that, that's the reason why they tailored certain laws and things that individuals had to, like I said, abide by. So the 42 laws of Ma'at, they are tailored towards the scribe Annie in his life. That's the reason why they felt so different to me. And I think that's, like I said, that's the reason why, for the most part, they don't really work a whole lot. They don't work real well. Usually when I tell people that, it's too much explanation and it goes over their head. So I have to try to explain it to them another way, you know. And so what I end up doing, I say, oh, all right, let's try this. Let me explain it to you like this. I say, I say, I do almost the exact same thing you do. I honor my ancestors. I have dedicated spaces to Kemetic divinities, but I also live according to Ma'at, with the difference being I don't follow the 42 laws of Ma'at. So what do you think the difference is? And usually whenever I ask that, it always throws them. They always think about it and they say, I'm not sure. And I tell them, so the difference between what I'm trying to do versus what you're doing is that I'm not trying to practice Kemetic spirituality. I am trying to live according to Ma'at. Again, questions. What do you mean? So, well, for instance, when I honor my ancestors, I honor my ancestors so that I can obtain and maintain Ma'at within my family. When I am honoring and venerating the Kemetic divinities, I'm honoring and venerating the Kemetic divinities in order to obtain and maintain Ma'at in various areas of my life. I then explain to them that basically, see, the difference between what I'm doing versus what you're doing is that I'm practicing Kemetic spirituality because I'm doing it by purpose. And when I tell them that, it kind of, you can see the wheels turning. And I try to explain to them, you see, to practice Kemetic spirituality, you have to delve deeper than just honoring the ancestors and having, altar spaces and all that. You have to go beyond that. That is kind of, when you're doing that, you're kind of on the shallow end of Kemetic spirituality. You're dealing with the most shallowest aspect of the Kemetic culture. To actually truly understand and practice Kemetic spirituality, you have to really study the Ma'at. And in particular, you have to really study the connection or understand the relationship between the spiritual and the physical, the invisible and the visible, the spirit and matter. That's really where Kemetic spirituality is at. Because once you start understanding the relationship between those two realities, once you understand the relationship between that, that's when you start to make the connection. This is how the Ma'at Cosmogram came to me. It was from me studying the Ma'at, and after studying the Ma'at and really, really delving into it, that I was able to make that connection. I was able to understand the land of the ancestors and the land of the living. And it was based upon making that connection that I was able to, all of a sudden, I had a holistic view of things. I had a different perspective from how a lot of people who say this is what Kemetic spirituality is. I had a completely different perspective. And this perspective was based upon my ancestral memories and my cultural understanding. So once I went here and I understood the Ma'at, and I understood the relationship between the ancestors and the living, like I said, it was a completely different perspective now, because now this is modeled, or is shown, or is seen in all aspects of the Kemetic tradition, in all aspects of Kemetic practices. So, for instance, whenever I pour libations to my ancestors, or whenever I offer rum or offer smoke and then offer some rum or so, this is, I'm doing my eye. I am going from the physical to the spiritual. All right. Whenever, whenever I have, for instance, a cigar, something you're thinking, oh, it's just a cigar and all that. But a cigar now, because of me understanding and studying the Ma'at, the cigar is now a Ma'at. It's now a symbol of Ma'at. Because again, it is acting as a bridge between the physical and the spiritual. So now this object becomes sacred. I can't smoke a cigar just to be smoking a cigar. All right? So here's me practicing the Ma'at. And the interesting thing is that when I delve a little bit deeper into this, I find out that this is what my Congo ancestors, when you see statues of the Congo kings and so forth and so on, this is the position, this is the how they're carved. They're carved, they show they're standing in between the physical and the spiritual realms. This is what makes Heru, who the Greeks call Horus, this is what makes Heru the ultimate example, ultimate model for the living of what it really means to be in the world, but not of the world. Because we're making a connection between the land of the living and the land of the dead. So this is how, in my opinion, how you practice Kemetic spirituality. When you don't delve and study the Ma'at, basically what you end up practicing, you're just basically, you're enamored by the form. You're focused on the form. You're focused on the outside stuff. You're focused on the most shallow aspects of the tradition. You're just basically mimicking. And that's the reason why after a few weeks of you doing this, or even a few months of doing this, it just doesn't go anywhere. It fizzles out. Because there's no change. In order for you to delve deeper and really get into Kemetic spirituality, you have to study the Ma'at. And once you understand and you study the Ma'at, and the Ma'at starts to take form in your life, this is when you get into the deeper aspects of this. And this is when you make the connection. And not only that, when you study the Ma'at, you make this connection with your ancestors. And what your ancestors do is they connect you with the higher spirit guides. And again, this is how the cosmogram came to me. And I've mentioned this before. It wasn't until I got that connection and I began honoring my ancestors that it was through my grandmother, whom I knew nothing about the Kemetic culture or any of that. But she was the one that connected me to one of the Kemetic spirit guides. And that's how I was able to make that connection. So if you are truly serious about practicing Kemetic spirituality, the one thing you have to do is you have to study the mind. And like I said, once you study the mind, that's when you'll see the doors open to Kemetic spirituality. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, feel free to drop me a line. Until next time, that's a boo. Peace.